This happened on a trail I used to walk after work. It was behind a sports complex near my old apartment. There were soccer fields, a playground, and then a wooded loop that went maybe 3 miles around a small lake. It was not a dangerous place. That's what I always tell people first, because I think it matters. There were usually families around, people with dogs, teenagers fishing near the water. It was the kind of trail where you'd feel silly being scared. I went there a lot, usually around 5:30 or 6. That day was warm, but not hot. I remember because I had brought a hoodie and immediately regretted it. I tied it around my waist after the first 10 minutes. About halfway around the loop, the trail split. The main path stayed close to the lake. The smaller path went uphill through thicker trees and rejoined later near the parking lot. I usually took the smaller path because fewer people used it, and it cut maybe 8 minutes off the walk. When I reached the split, I saw a man sitting on a fallen tree. He looked maybe mid-30s, maybe older, hard to tell. He had a baseball cap pulled low and one of those grey zip-up hoodies that everyone owns. He was breathing kind of heavily. As I got closer, he looked up and said, "Hey, do you have any water?" I did. I had a half-full bottle in my hand, and this is where people online always act like they would instantly know something was wrong. But in real life, someone asks for water, and you don't immediately think, this is a trap. You think, maybe this person is dehydrated. So I stopped a few feet away and said, "Yeah, are you okay?" He nodded, but didn't answer the question. I handed him the bottle. He took it, drank some, and handed it back. I remember not wanting to drink from it after that, but also feeling rude for thinking that. He said, "Do you know how far the parking lot is?" I said, "Maybe 20 minutes if you stay on this path." He looked behind me, toward where I came from. Then he said, "Is anyone else back there?" That was the first thing that felt off. Not, are there any other people nearby? Not, is this the right way? Is anyone else back there? I said, "Yeah, there are people by the lake." That was a lie. I hadn't seen anyone for at least 10 minutes. He looked disappointed, or maybe annoyed. It was small, but I noticed it. He stood up, and when he did, I realized he was not as weak as he had been acting. His breathing was normal now. He said, "Could you show me the way?" I said, "Just follow the path. It's easy." And I started walking. He started walking too. Behind me, not beside me. I didn't like that, so I slowed down and pretended to tie my shoe, hoping he would pass. He stopped, too. I stood back up. He smiled a little and said, "I'll just follow you." I remember my face getting hot. Not from fear exactly, more from that uncomfortable feeling when someone is forcing you into a situation and pretending they aren't. I said, "I'm actually going to call my friend real quick." He said, "No service out here." Too fast, like he already knew. I checked my phone anyway. He was right. 1 bar, then nothing. The trail ahead curved through a patch of pine trees. It was darker there, and for some reason, I really didn't want to go into that section with him behind me. So I turned around and said, "Actually, I'm going back to the lake." His expression changed. Only for a second, but it changed. He said, "You said the parking lot was this way." I said, "It is. I just forgot something." He said, "What did you forget?" I didn't answer. I stepped around him, giving him way too much space, and started walking back. For a few seconds, I heard nothing. Then he said louder, "Hey!" I kept walking. He said, "I'm talking to you." I walked faster. That was when I heard another voice. Not from him, from the trees on my left. A man's voice, low, saying, "Don't let him go." I don't remember deciding to run. I just ran. Behind me, the first man shouted something, and I heard branches breaking to my left. Not one person, at least two. I got back to the main path by the lake and almost slipped on the dirt because I was going too fast. There was a couple walking a small white dog, maybe 100 feet away from me. I yelled, "Can I walk with you?" They turned around, confused. I must have looked terrified, because the woman immediately said, "Of course." I didn't explain well. I just said there were men following me on the side trail. The man with the dog looked past me and said, "Where?" I turned. Nobody was there. The path was empty. That almost made it worse. A couple walked me back towards the parking lot. The whole time, the little dog kept turning around and growling at the trees. I know dogs growl at random things. I know that. But in the moment, it made my skin crawl. When we got close to the parking lot, I saw a white work van parked near the far end. No company logo, no back windows. The side door was slightly open. I had parked near it without thinking when I arrived. The couple stayed with me until I got to my car. As I was unloading it, the woman touched my arm and said, "Look!" The man from the trail was standing near the bathroom building. He was no longer acting tired. He was talking to someone inside the white van. I got into my car and left immediately. I called the non-emergency police line when I got home. I felt stupid doing it because nothing technically happened. I didn't have a license plate. I didn't have proof. The officer I spoke to was polite, but I could tell there wasn't much they could do. 2 days later, I saw a post in a local Facebook group. A woman said a man on that same trail had asked her for water and then tried to get her to take the upper path because he couldn't find the parking lot. She had been walking with her German Shepherd, so she didn't follow him. In the comments, another person mentioned seeing a white van parked there several times that week. After that, the city put up a sign at the trail entrance saying the upper path was temporarily closed for maintenance. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I never took that shortcut again, and I still hate that he asked me if anyone else was back there, because now I'm pretty sure he wasn't asking because he was lost. He was asking because he wanted to know whether anyone would hear me. This happened during a one-night camping trip that I almost didn't go on. I had been stressed from work and wanted to do something simple, nothing extreme. Just get away from my apartment, make food outside, sleep in a tent, and maybe come back next morning. The spot I chose was in a state forest about an hour and a half away. You could camp there for free in certain areas, and as long as you stayed away from the road and didn't leave trash. I had used the same area once before with 2 friends, so I sort of knew where I was going. I parked at a gravel pull-off around 4 p.m. and hiked in maybe 25 minutes. Not far. I found a flat spot near a creek and set up my tent between 2 big trees. It was one of those evenings that made me feel like the whole idea had been worth it. Cool air, water moving over rocks, no phone notifications. I made instant noodles on a little camping stove and sat there eating straight from the pot because I forgot a bowl. That detail is stupid, but I remember it clearly. Around sunset, I noticed smoke on the other side of the creek. At first, I thought it was mist. Then I saw a small orange glow of a fire through the trees. Someone else was camping across from me. I didn't love that, but it wasn't a problem. It was public land. They had as much right to be there as I did. I couldn't see the person, only the fire. I called out once, "Hey, how's it going?" No answer. I figured they didn't hear me over the creek. When it got darker, I put my food away, zipped my backpack, and sat by my own small fire for a while. Then I heard someone cough across the creek. Not strange by itself, but it was close enough that I realized the other campsite was much nearer than I thought, maybe 50 yards away. I could see their fire more clearly now, but still no person, just flames and the outline of what looked like a tarp hung between trees. I tried not to stare. A little after 9, I got into my tent. I wasn't sleeping yet. I was just lying there in my sleeping bag, listening to the creek and checking my phone, even though I had no service. Then I heard my name, not clearly shouted, not close, but I heard it. My name. At first, I thought maybe I had imagined it, that half-awake thing where your brain turns random sounds into words. Then I heard it again. Nick! From across the creek. I held my breath. I hadn't told anyone out there my name. I hadn't spoken to anyone. The only explanation I could think of was that they had heard me say it on the phone. But I hadn't made any calls. I had no service. I sat up slowly in the tent. For maybe a full minute, nothing happened. Then the voice said, "You forgot something." It was a man's voice. Calm, almost bored. I didn't answer. My first thought was that maybe he was talking to someone else. Maybe there was another Nick. That sounds ridiculous, but in that moment, I wanted any explanation that didn't involve a stranger knowing my name in the woods. Then something landed near my tent, a small thud in the leaves. I flinched so hard I hit my head on the tent pole. I waited. Nothing. I unzipped the tent a few inches and looked out. There was a small object on the ground near the fire pit. My driver's license. I had kept my wallet in the top pocket of my backpack. The backpack was inside the tent with me. I turned around. The pocket was open. My wallet was still there, but my license was gone. That means someone had opened my tent or reached inside while I was at the fire earlier. Maybe when I went to collect water. Maybe when I walked a few steps away to pee. I don't know. That is the part I still replay. I grabbed the license, shoved it into my pocket, and zipped the tent shut again. Then the man across the creek laughed. Not loud, just enough that I could hear it over the water. I knew I had to leave, but leaving meant packing up in the dark while whoever that was watched me. Staying meant lying there until morning, knowing he had already been close enough to take something from my backpack. I chose leaving. I didn't pack properly. I threw my sleeping bag, stove, and random things into my backpack without folding anything. I left the tent poles half attached and just rolled the whole mess together. While I packed, the fire across the creek stayed bright. Nobody moved over there. At least, nobody I could see. Then the voice said, "Wrong way." I froze. I hadn't even started walking yet. Then I realized what he meant. He had seen me looking toward the trail I came in on. I grabbed my backpack, left the tent on the ground, and went the opposite direction. I knew the creek eventually curved toward the gravel road. It would be longer and harder, but I couldn't make myself take the original trail. Behind me, the man called out, "Nick!" This time, it was louder. I kept moving. The woods were so dark that my headlamp only showed a small circle in front of me. Everything outside that circle felt like it could move without me seeing it. After maybe 10 minutes, I heard footsteps on the other side of the creek matching me. When I stopped, they stopped. When I moved, they moved. I turned off my headlamp. That sounds brave. It wasn't. It was panic. The darkness was almost complete, but after a few seconds, my eyes adjusted enough to see the creek as a pale line through the trees. Across it, I saw a shape moving. A person, keeping pace with me. I crouched behind a fallen tree and stayed completely still. The footsteps continued for a few seconds, then stopped. Then the man said, very softly, "I can still hear you." I don't know if he could. Maybe he was guessing, but I covered my mouth with my hand anyway because I was breathing too loud. I stayed there until my legs started cramping. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 15. I don't know. Eventually I heard him move farther downstream. That was my chance. I backed away from the creek, moving uphill through the trees, away from both the campsite and the water. I didn't know where I was going. I just wanted distance. After a while, I saw light through the trees. Not a flashlight, something steady. It was the gravel road. I came out maybe a quarter mile from my car. I had never been so relieved to see a gravel pull-off in my life. My car was still there, but there was something on the windshield, a piece of paper under the wiper. I almost didn't take it, but I did. It was a page torn from a small notebook. All it said were the words, "You dropped this." Taped to it was my credit card. I checked my wallet. The credit card slot was empty. I drove home with the dome light on the whole way because I kept feeling like someone was in my back seat, even though I checked twice. The next morning, I called the ranger station and reported what happened. A ranger went out there and found my abandoned tent. He also found the campsite across the creek. There had been a fire, there had been a tarp, but whoever was there had cleaned up almost everything. Almost. The ranger said they found several pieces of mail in a plastic bag under a rock. Different names, different addresses, all from people who had apparently camped or parked in that forest at some point. He couldn't tell me more than that. I never got my tent back. I didn't want it. For months, I kept wondering how long he had watched me before saying my name. But now, I think the worst answer is simpler. He probably didn't know my name when I arrived. He learned it after going through my wallet, while I was only a few feet away. This happened about 2 years ago, and I still think about it every time I see one of those little trail cameras strapped to a tree. My friend's dad owned a few acres of wooded land, about 40 minutes outside town. It wasn't some huge private forest or anything, just a long gravel driveway, a small shed, and a bunch of trees behind it that eventually connected to a public hunting land. I had been there plenty of times. Sometimes we'd help him clear branches after storms or stack firewood near the shed. It was one of those places where nothing ever really happened, which is probably why I agreed to go there alone. His dad had 3 trail cameras set up because someone had been dumping trash near the back of the property, mostly old beer cans, fast food bags, once even a broken microwave. He asked if I could stop by after work and swap out the SD cards because it was out of town. I remember almost saying no, just because I was tired, but it sounded simple. Drive out there, grab the cards, leave. I got there a little after 6. It was late October, so it wasn't dark yet, but it was getting there. That grey kind of evening where the woods don't look scary exactly, just cold and empty. The first camera was near the shed. Easy. The second one was maybe 5 minutes into the trees, facing an old path where deer usually crossed. Also easy. The third camera was farther back, near the edge of the property. I had only been to that spot once before, but his dad had sent me a photo with a red circle on it, so I wasn't worried. I remember walking with my phone in one hand and my keys in the other, not because I was scared. I just didn't want to lose them in the leaves. The woods were quiet, but not in a creepy way at first. You could hear birds, a few branches moving, and once in a while the sound of a car from the road, very far behind me. When I found the third camera, I noticed right away that it was angled wrong. It was supposed to face the old fence line. Instead, it was turned toward the path. toward where I had just walked in. At first, I thought maybe a deer bumped it, or wind, or the strap had loosened. I took the SD card out, replaced it with a blank one, and started adjusting the camera back toward the fence. That's when I noticed something scratched into the tree beside it. Not carved deep, just scratched through the bark with something sharp. It said, "Smile." I stared at it for a second, and I remember doing this stupid little laugh through my nose. Not because it was funny, because my brain didn't want to take it seriously. I actually said out loud, "Okay, that's weird." Then I heard something move behind me. Not a huge crash, not someone running, just one step in dry leaves. I turned around. Nothing. The path was empty. But I suddenly became aware that I was standing with my back to the public hunting land, holding a tiny plastic SD card with both hands full. I put the card in my pocket and started walking back. I didn't run. That's the part that feels dumb now. I just walked quickly and kept looking to my left and right like an idiot, trying to act normal for whoever might have been there. About halfway back, I heard a whistle. One note, not a bird. A person. I stopped. The whistle came again, a little closer. I didn't call out. I didn't say hello. I just kept walking. Then my phone buzzed in my hand and I almost dropped it. It was my friend texting me. "All good?" I typed, "Yeah, leaving now." I don't know why I lied. I think I didn't want to make it a thing. Then another message came through. "Dad says don't go to camera 3. I stopped walking. I read it again. Then I called him. He picked up and immediately said, "Are you already back there?" I said, "I just changed it. Why?" He said, "Because he checked the app. Camera 3 went offline yesterday. He thinks someone took it." I turned around slowly. I couldn't see the camera from where I was, but I knew exactly where it was. I said, "It was there." He said, "What?" I said, "The camera was there. I just took the card out." There was a silence on the phone. Then he said, "That's not possible. He has the third camera with him." I didn't understand at first. I actually said, "What do you mean he has it?" He said, "He took it down last weekend because the battery was dying." For a few seconds, I could hear him breathing on the phone and the leaves under my feet at the same time. Then I understood. The camera I had just opened was not his. Someone had put a camera there, in the same place, facing the path, waiting for someone to walk up to it. I started moving faster. My friend told me to stay on the phone and get to my car. His voice had completely changed. He wasn't trying to calm me down. He was scared too. When I got close to the shed, I heard something behind me again. This time, it was not one step. It was several. Someone walking through the leaves, trying to stay off the path. I looked back and saw a person between the trees, only for maybe a second. Dark jacket, hood up, standing still. Not close, but close enough that I could tell they were facing me. I ran the last part. I got in my car, locked the doors, and reversed down the gravel driveway so fast that my tires slid a little. Only when I reached the main road did I remember the SD cards in my pocket. I drove straight to my friend's house. His dad was already there when I arrived. He looked angry at first, like he thought I was messing with him. But then I gave him the card from the fake camera. He put it into his laptop. There were only 4 files. The first was me walking towards the camera. The second was me standing in front of it, reading the words scratched into the tree. The third was a video of me replacing the card. The 4th file was from earlier, that same day. It showed a man walking up to the camera. He wore gloves and a mask. Not a ski mask, just one of those black fabric masks people wore during COVID. He adjusted the camera, Then he leaned close to it and whispered something. The audio was terrible, but after playing it 3 or 4 times, we could make it out. He said, "Let's see who comes." That was it. The police came out next morning. They found the fake camera still strapped to the tree, but whoever put it there had taken the new card I left inside. They also found 2 more cameras nearby, one facing the shed, one facing the driveway. I think about that a lot, because that means he didn't just want to catch someone dumping trash. He wanted to know when people came and went. He wanted to know who came alone, and for a few minutes that evening, I was exactly that, alone.